everybody out today, we'll go ahead and get started. Let's begin with a Pledge of Allegiance. If we could all stand and I'll start us out. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We appreciate your attendance. We're looking forward to today's meeting. Joan, can you do a roll call for us, please?
Martin.
Here.
Charles Long. Here. Michael Shaw. Here. Priscilla Benali.
Present.
Kevin Mitchell.
Here.
All right, we do have a quorum. Ladies and gentlemen of the audience and board members, if you'll indulge us before we get started, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence for a student that we lost over the weekend from Crown Point, from our Crown Point community. Thank you, everyone. It's always a tremendous tragedy, the loss of life at such a young age, and our hearts and our prayers go out to the family members and those that knew the student. We appreciate the moment of silence. I appreciate your time with that. Let's move on to the first item in our agenda, number 2. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Ms. Benali.
Yes.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen.
Yes. The first item we have here is recognition, and for that, I'll turn the time over to Mr. Hyatt.
President Mortensen, members of the board, audience, we're excited for today. We have an opportunity to recognize we call it the 2023 Spelling Bee champions. And there's a few faces out there I remember from last year. Wasn't able to attend this year, but it's good to see you back and to see your success as Spelling Bee champions and runner-ups. We're going to recognize you. I'm going to give Wade a minute to talk a little bit about the Spelling Bee. Mr. Bell, and then we're going to have the board come up, and we'd like to call each individual student up and recognize them and get a picture with them, and we're just really proud of them, and especially this year, all of them are from Gallup McKinley County Schools, all of the winners, and so we're very proud of you and proud of your efforts to do something that I could never do, and it's tough up there. It's a lot of pressure.
Original Spelling Bee was on January 18th. We had a snow day that day, and so we moved it into January 19th. And luckily, we found 3 winners. So first of all, I'm going to invite our 3 winners up here. First of all,
Mr. Bell,
yes,
we're going to have the board come up.
Yes, sir.
First, yes.
If the board would come up. So our 3rd place winner was from Red Rock Elementary, a 4th grade student. His word was Leander, age 9, Mr. Ahmed Sufan. Come on down. Ahmed Sufan. For our 2nd place winner from Tobe Turpin Elementary, the winning word was masa. Age 10, grade 5, Tempest Kobe. Come on down. And our first place winner is from Gallup Middle School. The winning word was CERT. Age 11, 6th grade, Madison Chavez. Come on down. So the board knows this. All three members will participate in the state spelling bee at Sandia Prep in March 2023 at Sandia Prep. So this is one of the few times we aren't sending just two winners. We're sending all three winners to participate. So I hope them the best of luck. We will be there to supporting you. Thank you guys very much. And if you've met the families of these three students, you will know they know the words as well. We've all been studying, haven't we? A lot of work. Thank you guys very much.
That's always one of our favorite things to do as school board members, is to recognize the achievements of our students. It's important, kids, before you leave, you guys get out there and kick some butt. You can compete with anyone, anywhere, anytime. So go home and bring home the prize. We're proud of you. Good luck. Good luck.
Mr. Mortensen, that was on March 23?
Mr. Bill, what's the date for the spelling bee, the statewide spelling bee competition?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the board, next item is approval of the minutes from our January 9th meeting. Is there a motion on the table?
Motion. Second.
A second? All right, roll call, please, Joan.
Yes. Ms. Benali?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen?
Yes. Next item is the approval of the consent agenda items. Are there any questions over any of these? And if not, I'll entertain a motion to approve item 4A, B, C, D, E, and F.
Mr. Mortensen,
Yes,
I'd like
ma'am.
to go ahead and motion to approve, but I would like to have, I have a question on the career pathway site visit. Could someone elaborate just a little more on that for us?
Sure. President Mortensen, Ms. Benali, we have continually looked at how we design and how we improve our career pathway program. And as you know, we are also looking to actually create and build a career tech center for our students. And so we have been engaged with our business community and obviously internally as a school district, looking how we can accomplish those goals. And also, as a part of that, exposing our teachers and staff and, again, business leaders into what this looks like, not only internally, but also looking at other models in the country to help gain ideas and to, again, for continuous improvement. And so if you're speaking of 4C1, is that the item I'm assuming you're referring to?
Yes,
4C.
C1 and 2.
Yes, and so that's what both of those visits are for. As you notice in the first one, we have 29 teachers that are going, along with the second one is 56 teachers. And it's just continuous professional development. Sometimes it's nice to be able to go somewhere and see rather than just read or hear about. It allows you to better your practice as an educator, to improve your instruction, and to better create a more holistic environment so that the career pathways are embedded in all parts of not only your teaching in your particular content area, but also with respect to the whole school and a community-based school environment.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt for that elaboration on that. I'm just excited for this Career Tech Center for our students, and it's nice to know we have that many teachers and administrators, it says, that will be attending. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second on the consent agenda items?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mitchell. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Long, Mr. Mortensen.
Yes. All right, next item is study circle. We don't have any public comment today. We've got a quick report by Mr. Hyatt, superintendent report, please.
President Mortensen, members of the board, I'm going to invite Assistant Superintendent Kadan Montano and Eileen Haas, who oversees our food service department. They'll give a little bit more detail, but we were selected by the state for an audit, a random audit, and for our food service program. And so we just wanted to report back some of the findings and give you a little information on that audit. So, Ms. Montano.
President Mortensen, members of the board, this past week on January 23rd and 24th, GMCS Food Service along with SFE had the National School Lunch Program Administrative Review. The New Mexico Public Education Department conducted the administrative review to meet federal and state regulations and to ensure the national school lunch program and the school breakfast program, all of the requirements are met. So this process provides a comprehensive evaluation of school nutrition programs. It also covers critical and general areas that are thoroughly monitored with a pre-visit and post-visit procedures. There's 4 components that they're looking at: the meal access and reimbursement, meal pattern and nutritional quality, resource management, general program compliance, and then of course other federal national programs such as the after-school snack program, fresh fruit and vegetable program, and the seamless summer operation. So a team from NMPED came on site to visit some selected schools. At this time, I'm going to ask Eileen Haas to go over the specifics of the review.
Excuse me. President Mortensen, members of the board, the auditors came and they had us do some things before their review. We uploaded many documents ahead of time, including tick sheets, menus, nutritional analysis, etc. This information was used to determine the overall risk assessment of our program before they were on site. On site, they chose to visit Jefferson Elementary, Navajo Elementary, through middle school and through high school. They were tasked with monitoring our school breakfast program, national school lunch program, and the after-school snack program. On site, they verified that we were in compliance regarding the setup of our kitchens, that we had the right signage up, including food permits, temperature logs, safety guidelines. They made sure that we were following the first in, first out procedure with our inventory. They double-checked that our projection records matched the number of meals we claimed for reimbursement, and they watched the process that we have in place to count each reimbursable meal. They analyzed the meal to confirm that it met the USDA's nutritional guidelines, and they observed breakfast at Navajo Elementary and Jefferson Elementary, and they observed lunch at all 4 sites, Navajo L, Jefferson Elementary through mid and through high. They also observed the after-school snack program at Jefferson Elementary. At the end of the administrative review, we had an exit conference where the reviewers gave us feedback. And they only had good things to say, which was a good thing. Here are some of the things that they shared with us. They were pleased with our department's quick response to their request for the documentation during the pre-review timeframe. They loved the salad bars that are in place at all district schools. They noticed that there was a good variety of fruits and vegetables offered and that the kids were excited about the selections. They liked that the kids were adding to their plates these fruit and vegetables. They recognized that the staff was diligent in looking for and claiming students that had a reimbursable meal. And there were no items of corrective action. If there are any questions?
Mr. Mortensen?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Thank you very much. I know that with our regular school, our regular district audits, we as a board are able to sit in on those meetings. Is that the same with this kind of audit?
President Mortensen, Ms. Denali, that is not the case for this kind of audit. This was just a special audit they just came in and just did one on the spur of the moment.
Okay.
So they selected us. I believe they selected not just our school district, but I believe they selected others randomly across the state. But it was not like a required audit like the typical yearly audit is.
Okay. So that might have answered my next question. Did you guys select these schools, or did they select these schools?
They selected them.
And the other question, did they interview or talk to any of the students at these schools?
Yes, they did. As the students were walking by, they would talk to them, just kind of ask them what their feelings were. They just watched them as they took the trays and added to their trays from the salad bar. There wasn't a lot of interaction, but a little bit of minimal interaction.
Thank you.
Did they themselves taste the food, or were they just observing?
They just observed.
Oh, that's too bad. It would have been good to have
That was a good question.
get in there and dig in.
They're not fruit and vegetable people.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe.
They were eating their microwave burritos in the cars probably before they came in. Board
Yeah.
members, other questions?
Yeah, just one question. In addition to looking at what's on the menu, did they looked at what food is being dumped and all that stuff, not eaten by students?
No, there isn't a lot of that. That's not part of their review. They simply are worried about what we offer and if we meet the guidelines.
They should, because I think there's a lot of food that gets dumped by students.
Yeah.
Well, I think, adding on to Mr. Long's comment, I think that would be like a budget issue, because, why are they spending so much money on an item that kids are not really interested in eating? So that would be like a waste of food or waste of funds. So I don't understand why they wouldn't also look into that, because there are some that are not being eaten.
We do track based on participation, items that are more popular versus those that maybe aren't as widely, liked. And so there are changes to the menu based on those statistics.
One more question, Mr. Martinson.
Yes, ma'am.
Do they also check the percentage of what is not processed or that's just easily heat up compared to something that's made there at the school? Fresh?
So there's a mix of obviously some minimally processed and fresh, and they don't, that's not part of their review. They're simply more worried about the nutritional analysis, whether or not it meets the guidelines of the USDA.
Mr. Mortensen,
Yes, sir.
I know you said it was like spare of the moment. Were these schools notified that they were coming in and getting audited, or did they just show up at these schools, or did they have time to maybe?
They did have time. We received notice in December that we were being audited, and the beginning of January is when we received notice of which schools. So they had about a 2-week period.
So when I said spur of the moment, it wasn't as if I meant they just showed up, but it was not a regular reoccurring audit. We were selected during the year. It's not something that happens every year.
Usually
I'm
happens
just-
every 3 years.
So I'm just kind of, I guess what I want to say is I hope that, these schools, the kitchens that they went to observe are continuing to do what they probably did at their best that day. Is, more or less what I want to say. Thank you.
Ms. Hawes, what I think would be great is to give an opportunity for our board members, again, we've done this before, let's have them go and visit schools at the spur of the moment and have them come in. So if it's possible, you can work with SFE, we get some tickets for them, and let's let them go at it and go to each school and go in there, and they can go in disguised or however they want so they can experience.
Undercover.
I'm not sure that they can get shorter, maybe for maybe the first graders, but maybe they can figure out a way that they can also go in and do their own assessment. I think that would be a great idea to give us more feedback about the quality and conditions of the service.
I love that idea. Yes, definitely. We can accommodate
sir.
that.
Yeah, that would be good, just to go in there like undercover boss, something like that, and without them knowing. If they know we're coming, they're going to prepare the best meal for us.
Yes, we can definitely accommodate that.
Me and Michael will shave.
Well, it depends
so
how
we
much,
go in there
it
sneaky.
really depends how much they like the board member or not, whether it'll be a nice meal or not. So that'll tell you kind of how they, no, just kidding. I'm just joking. No.
I think the other part of that too would be a good day when maybe our athletes are getting on the road, that we can actually see what they're eating. And I know that there's been talk about changing the menu for travel for our students, because some of them are getting the same thing over and over again. So that would be interesting to know too. Thank you.
Okay.
That's a great question. Can I ask that really quick, Eileen? I think for the most part, when we changed our allotted amount per meal, I think that drastically reduced the number of meals that athletic teams are taking with them. Are there very many athletic meals that are going with athletic teams?
There are a
There
lot.
still are? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
there are a lot.
Maybe to remote locations, like if you're going to Magdalena or wherever, obviously there's no place to eat. So those
Yes.
are, okay. Yeah, if you could do me a favor then and get me what the current menu is that they can select from for that, and I can pass it on to the board, because I'm not as in tune with that as I should be of what it's changed to.
Okay, sure will.
Thank you for your presentation. I do have a quick question, maybe just a curiosity question. What is the most popular lunch meal?
I would probably say pizza day, chicken nuggets for the elementary schools. Those are some, just typically what your average kid wants all the time are the most popular.
Things
days.
never change, huh? Pizza and chicken nuggets. I was hoping you'd say like Salisbury steak or something. That was always like one of the staples. In all honesty, thank you very, very much for your work. This part of it, these audits are great to get feedback and to know that we're in compliance. But it's a compliment that's due in arrears is during the pandemic and COVID, the work that you and your staff and the food staff did getting the logistics of getting food out on buses and stuff like that was just like crazy. And we really appreciate your hard work, and it's incredible to the staying in compliance is an incredible accomplishment, while also being able to respond to things at the spur of the moment and to the changing needs of our district and the large needs of our district. So thank you, and hats off and compliments to you and your staff and everybody else.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mortensen. A couple more I wanted to, we asked, actually when the Chef Neil was here, he said he was going to get water in, what do they call, water
stations?
Yes.
There
at
are
each
water
schools.
stations in most of our schools.
Okay.
We had an issue with the supply chain, purchasing replacement pitchers for any of the schools that needed them. We couldn't find them, or we couldn't find them at a decent price. So,
Okay. But we're still looking, and we'll still get those.
Yes,
Okay.
they'll probably become more available as summer comes.
And the other specific question I asked them before was on special days that we have students in, he was going to look at USDA approved traditional, culturally relevant meals that we could give our children. And I don't know how far that went, but that would be something that he said he was going to look into to see if we could do that at least once a year, or on certain culturally, times.
So I do know that in the month of, I don't know if it was October or November, that was Hispanic Heritage Month. There were some offerings, Taco Tuesday and some other things like that were offered during that month. So yes, we will continue to work on offering those types of things.
Thank you.
On a side note, Ms. Benali, in regards to the water, I know there's an ongoing project in the district, all across the district, to put the little like bottle fill stations in all the in all the drinking fountains, and that's an ongoing thing, which would obviously make the pitchers obsolete once that's done. But yeah, it's an ongoing process right now to get all that stuff installed. Great.
Thank you. Good audit.
Thank you, yes. Next item on our agenda, I'll just focus your attention, write down for your notes, is our notices and communications with our upcoming schedule of meetings and events. Looks like we're far enough in the calendar now. We got spring break on there, so everybody can make sure and put that one down. That's always exciting. And then we'll go down to new business, item 6A, and I will turn the time over to Mr. Hyatt.
Again, Mr. Mortensen, members of the board, Mr. Klein, would you mind coming up? And we have the final audit report for you today, the audit that we were talking about a minute ago with Ms. Benali. Mr. Klein.
President Mortensen, members of the board, thank you. Today's just the day of audits, and right now we're actually going to go over our financial statement audit. So we did actually, our audit was complete November 15th. We did have the audit exit conference. During that time, we had to submit to the Office of the State Auditor, and then now the audit is complete. It's ready to be released. We will have it up on our website after this. We wanted to present this. So this is really just acknowledging the receipt of the audit. We do have our auditor here. He's actually going to go over a presentation as well. But before I introduce him, I just wanted to quickly thank our entire team here at Gallup McKinley County Schools. If I went through all the programs, I would be up here the whole time kind of thanking everybody. But we all played a major role. And it's not just the business office who helps with this. There's quite a few individuals that we're having to communicate with to get this done, right? And these audits are important because our community is relying on these things, our students, the families, and so we need to make sure that this audit's accurate, it's correct, we're spending funds timely, appropriately, accurately. So, we always do a good job. And finally, I wanted to thank our auditors for their transparency, their communication. They do a great job with us too. Never have any issue with, if I feel like there's something that we're doing incorrect or I'd like some feedback. I never worry to ask them, and they're just always supportive, and they give us the right information because, at the end of the day, we are going to make mistakes, but we want to improve on those mistakes. And, I'm never shy to, ask for help, and that's what this is all about. So with that being said, I would like to introduce Farley Benner. He is the president and managing shareholder of Hinkle and Landers, and he will be giving a presentation. And then we will stand for questions after.
Good afternoon. My name is Farley Benner, and I'm here to present the results of the 2022 audit. If I can go ahead and use our PowerPoint to walk through the results. So just to identify the scope of our work. So our job is to give an opinion on the financial statements, and also we give an opinion on the expenditures of the federal dollars that the district has spent. And so I'll go ahead and move forward. There are...
One second. I apologize. President Mortensen, we thought we had copies of the PowerPoint. We do not have those in here. And so I'm asking you if you'd like to wait for a copy of the PowerPoint, or if continuing on with the PowerPoint on the screen is going to be enough. I want to make sure we could do another action item and come back to this one. It's up to the pleasure of the board.
Board members, are you all right with presentation on the board, or do we need to have and then get maybe an electronic copy afterwards?
Yeah, I can write my notes on.
All right for everybody?
Okay,
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure. All right, thank you. Yes.
All right, so just continue on. We just have certain information. Audits are by a CPA firm are very highly regulated, so we're under the rules of the accounting rules, the national accounting rules, and under the state auditor rules, as well as there's the government, the GAO rules. So a lot of regulations go into when we perform our audits. What we have here is a page that just talks about the responsibilities of management and the auditor. So management has a lot of responsibility. They are your numbers. So you maintain internal controls, checks and balances, and you give us access to that information. And then our job, what we talk about here, is that our job is to give an opinion, make sure that you follow the GAAP in GASB. These are the standards that you follow as an organization. In addition to that, because you have the federal dollars, there's another type of responsibility, is maintaining those federal dollars, making sure that you track them all very accurately, so that we present those accurately, because we do give, it's part of the opinion that we give is the accuracy of those federal dollars and whether the school district is in compliance with the expenditures of those dollars. And then what we have here is just basically a summary of what happened during the audit. So new standards, there was a new lease standard. So that means that leases in the past were you would have just a note disclosure in the financial statements. It'd just be a note explaining that you have a commitment for leases, whether that's leases that you pay or leases where you are the lessee or the lessor and that you are receiving payments. But in 2022, there was a new standard that those leases need to move to the balance sheet. So they're like they want to show the lease liability on your balance sheet. They want to show the actual asset that's being leased, the right of use. So even though you don't really feel like you own it, you have the use of that asset. So that was a big change for any organization under GASB. And then we just identify adjusting journal entries that we make. So of course the school district is on a cash basis month to month, but at year end you have to be on an accrual basis of accounting. So we help assist get those adjustments in for the proper presentation of the audit report. And then we talk about estimates. So there's just certain allocations of expenses, allowance, collectability of receivables, things like that. So we disclose that, and we also disclose it in the notes of the audit report. Results. So the results of the audit, we can go through that. So it's an unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statements. And on the federal award, so the giving opinion on the federal dollars spent, that's also clean or unmodified. And then I'm going to turn to the audit. If you have your audit report, we could take a look at that summary. I'll just say if my eyes aren't so great, I can even see that well. That shouldn't be. So I'm going to use the report. And we just talk about the findings. And those are usually what people have interest in. So last year you had a finding on a bank reconciliation process. So that finding in 2021, that was resolved and went away. It's been corrected. And then this year you had a finding on uncollateralized bank accounts. So that just means the amount of dollars that are over, they're not insured. So in other words, typically $250,000 is automatically insured by FDIC bank insurance. And then of course you have large balances at the bank, so there was an amount that was not entirely collateralized or insured. And there was a comment also, and then just to explain, there's all different types of findings. So this was classified, we call it letter G, which means it's a state audit rule compliance finding. So it's not a material weakness, it's not a significant deficiency. So it's not a high magnitude type of finding. But the state audit rule says, oh, we want to make sure those are collateralized. And then the next comment is called lack of control of pay rates, and that is, we're showing it as letter C, which also is not a high level of magnitude of for a finding. So it's not material weakness, not significant deficiency. So it's just another matter. It would definitely be in the best interest of the school district to have some controls over the pay rates based on what we found during our testing. So those are the findings. And then we just have some trends here. And it just shows actually the increase in, looks like we're going to get some, a little help here. But appreciate that. So if you can see those trends, you're going to see this is like a balance sheet, and we have several years of balance sheets to look at and see the trends. And so we see the assets at June 30th, 2022 at like $750 million at $750,000. And the liabilities that offset those assets are at $581 million. So your equity net position is $171 million, and then you can just see those trends. And so moving on, we have a current ratio. This shows liquidity. So really, there's no issues with liquidity. We have a definition of liquidity of 1.5 to 3. So in other words, current assets compared to current liabilities. You divide the assets by the liabilities, and you say, how liquid are we? And you're at a 7 number, so that's very shows a very comfortable level of liquidity. And moving on to a little bit more detail of that $750 million in assets, we just see, well, what type of assets are they? And so no surprise, the largest amount is capital assets, just investment in the structures and equipment and things like that at $417 million. Pension, there's pension related assets and liabilities are very large for an organization this size. So $137 million in a pension deferral. The cash amount is $106 million. And then you have addition to cash, you have restricted cash of almost $60 million. And receivables called due from other governments, $14 million. Investments, which are conservative type of investments, seed certificates of deposit at just under $5 million. So those are the main types of assets that you have. And moving on to the liability side, pension deferral related to the retiree pension amounts for retirement. $245 million there on the liability side. The unfunded pension liabilities at $168 million. And then you have OPEB for health-related liabilities or other pension, types of, it's like retirement liability related to health at $53 million. Bonds payable, $69 million. And those are your largest types of liabilities. Moving on to the capital assets, so we just see a graph here that shows the capital assets in relation to the amount that was financed. So you have bonds payable that help finance those assets. So that's $69 million, but as we noted before, your capital assets are $470 17 million, so not really heavily financed. Equity, you can see the equity broken into different categories. So we see the capital assets again, so the amount of the school district's equity that's invested in the capital assets at 345 million. So we said that 417 million, subtract the 69 million that's been financed. The remainder is coming out of the district's, well, it came out of the equity, or sits in equity. Restricted to, you have other types of funds that are restricted. You have funds held for debt service, for future payments of debt service. Capital projects, 25 million, and then just other programs held in the special revenue funds of 51 million. And then that very bottom number, you see a deficit there. So $260 million unrestricted deficit. So that's because of the participation in OPEB and the PARA, or ER, the teacher's version of that. Moving on to program revenue, we just see the amount of revenue, and what's more kind of interesting, but I won't go into detail here, is just how it trends out as we have 8 years to trend here and compare. But we just see the operating grants at 98 million this year, up from prior year. So that was your biggest change. Capital grants are a little less than last year. You can just see how those trend. And I think I moved that. Okay. And then expenses by type. So these are, well, let's see, I'm moving a little bit off. So general revenue before we go to expenses. And the state equalization guarantee fund. So has increased quite a bit from, let's say, 5, 6, 7 years ago. In 2022, it's at 118 million. And property taxes pretty stable, but a little bit less than prior year, 6.4 million. And then some OPEB revenue. So again, a lot of adjustments related to the calculation of OPEB. So those are your main general revenues. And expenses by type, very broad presentation here, just by the function. So so we see instruction at 178 million, support services at 31 million, the amount of money paid on interest of the debt at 850,000. And just a year-over-year comparison of expenses, 2022 compared to 2021. Expenses did increase by about 26% compared to the prior year. And big changes are in instruction, operations, maintenance, plant. Those numbers are 25 million and 13 million respectively. Some other changes, more money paid out in food services, no surprise with COVID. And central services, $1.7 million increase. So. And that's our presentation. So we do thank the school district in helping us. Of course, we come in, it's a very big project for management to work with the auditors, and we ask for a lot of things and test it, and it's a big project for them to handle. So thank you for all the work. And I can stand for any questions or discussion.
Board members, do you have any questions?
I have one. Go ahead, Mr. Wong.
Yes, sir. Please.
I have one question on, I guess, 2022 findings under collateralized bank account. Is it that the bank are not pledging enough securities? Is that what it is?
Do you want to take that, Chris, or do you want me to take it? Okay. I think Chris can answer that.
Yeah, Mr. Long, thank you. So essentially, This finding, to be honest with you, is a little frustrating in the various feedback that I received, both from our auditors. We attended some business conferences. So this finding is actually a top 10 finding, and it's pretty common. And what happens is, at the end of the year, so for our district specifically, we're getting close to the end of the year. We're receiving funds. We're making some end-of-month transfers from pulling from another bank, right? And so what happened was at the end of, basically on June 30th, we received some more funds than what the bank was expecting, and so they weren't prepared for it, and so we were under collateralized. And I say frustrating because this is our audit, it's our finding. We take responsibility, but there's still a level of reliance you have on the bank to kind of get this correct. And yeah, I really am not here to point fingers, but it's a frustrating part to this. I think going forward, and you can see on page it's 143 where this audit's findings stated, we're just going forward next year, we're going to over communicate to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Most findings that we have, I see them and I'm like, okay, that's not going to happen again. This one I'm worried because there is still a reliance on the bank, and if they're not doing their part in it, this can happen, and that's the frustrating part. But ultimately, it is what it is, and that's, Mr. Long, to answer your question, that's essentially what happened.
Any other questions, Mr. Wong? More questions?
In the state laws, do we have a law that requires banks that are holding accounts for school districts like ours, or they require it to maybe pledge security of 100%?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I can read off the criteria, and so it is a state statute, as you have mentioned here, and actually the requirement is to have 50% for coverage, and then certain times when you have investments, like when you have CDs, that would be at 102%. So those are the thresholds. Yeah.
Ms. Benali?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Martinson. I think something that I've seen once when we were reviewing audits with another board was a trend data that they provided us with like on page 140, we have the financial statements, the unmodified, and then also the major programs unmodified, and with the reported financial reportings where there may be some findings and just a number of findings. So it was like year by year, they did like a 10-year trim where every year we saw an improvement, or in some schools we saw, them getting worse and worse. So I don't know if that's something that we can see year by year to see what that trend looks like for our district, because I remember coming brand new into this as a board member, we had to look at our findings and then turn the page and look at more findings. So I know there's been an improvement, but I just want, some of the issues, well, not issues, but the information to be out there, that there is improvement with our budgets that's happening from years prior when, like I said, when I first started.
Yeah, of course, we have a lot of trends here. Our focus is the financial statements and the trends or changes there. It's always possible you can put a trend together of findings. I know findings are of interest. For perspective here, really, you have two other matter type findings. They're not even rising to the level of a deficiency. So, overall, I would say the school's in very good shape. But if you did want that could be something that we could provide a graph on in the future.
Yeah, it's hard, Ms. Benali, it's hard to trend it because it's it's not perfectly apples to apples. Like you said, there's different kinds of findings, which may not equate to another one. So, for example, I think 7 years ago we had for a few years there were like 12 findings or something like that, a dozen findings or so. And then we went down to 0 for the last few years. And we have 2 this year, which is still within a range of acceptability, even though we always want to make sure that we do the best we can. But these are the audits to help us improve. But as you mentioned, some of those findings from the past were pretty significant compared to these 2 this year, which are fairly insignificant. Still important to correct, but less significant than the other ones. But we can do that. I can give you a list of findings for however many years back that we have the data for.
What do we, what's the remedy for this lack of control over pay rates finding?
It's on the second page. So I'll talk about it a little bit. So this particular one, Mr. Mortensen, has to do with just making sure, sometimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but we have worked with daily rates, and we've also worked with hourly rates to pay employees. For many years, usually we on average mostly do a specific rate for like after school programs. We pay teachers extra or staff extra. In this particular year, I believe it was we were using daily rates, and it got mixed up with hourly rates or a set daily rate that doesn't fluctuate. And so what the remedy is just to stick to a flat rate. That way, the person doing the paperwork and submitting it, it's much easier for them than trying to find out what that daily rate is. And so a flat rate's set, and most people are going to get that flat rate. It might fluctuate depending on whether you're a teacher versus an EA, but instead of having to always go back and find out what the actual daily rate was, which is sometimes different for everybody, or at least a larger number of people, that's where we got caught on one of them where we just inputted the wrong rate. So, Mr. Klein, you want to add my comments?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Mr. Hyatt. That is exactly correct. So if you look on page 145, I had actually had them there for comparison for last year. So it was $40 or the hourly rate, whichever's higher. And what had happened was there was 4 employees who were identified who we actually paid the lower of that. And very, very important to get that correct. But the total amount was, I think it added up for the 4 of them, it was about $70. But it wasn't so much a materiality thing. It was, we still need to make sure this is right going forward. And as Mr. Hyatt alluded to, so this current year that we're in, we just did one flat rate instead of worrying about which one's the higher one, because we do have a lot of employees, and it's very easy for a mistake like this to be made. And so this is our best action to get this corrected going forward, which I'm very confident in that we will.
Thank you. Thank you. Board members, more questions?
Mr. Mortensen, I'd like to make a motion to approval of the acknowledged receipt of the 2021-2022 audit report for Gallup McKinley County Schools, sir.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Schaaf. He beat you a little bit there, Kevin. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Spinelli,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Long, Mr. Mortensen.
Yes. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for your work.
And I want to say on a side note, thank you very much for your work, auditors and financial staff here at our school district. This is, this document is a monument to your competence and your excellent work, and we appreciate it. This is we've said this before. This is the widow's mite, and it's very, very important to us that we spend the money wisely and that there's accountability. And it looks like you're doing a hell of a job. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, board members, next item on the agenda is item 6B, and for that I'll turn the time back over, I believe, to Mr. Hyatt to step us through a couple of things on this particular trip.
President Mortensen, I want to make sure that you have a copy of what we're talking about. There was a request for...
Draw your attention to back here in the agenda. What's it look like, Mr. Hyatt?
One second, Mr. Mortensen. Let's go on, Mr. Mortensen, to the last item first, and we'll go
Okay.
this one last.
Yeah, we'll get some paperwork together for this one and step back to it. Okay, the last item is item 6C, approval of signing incentives for teachers and counselors and principals and bus drivers for the 23-24 school year.
President Mortensen, members of the board, as you know, each year, especially with the influx of federal funds, and even without federal funds, we are always looking for ways to continually improve not only retention, but this time of year, obviously, we're also focused on attraction of qualified staff to our school district and making sure that we are recruiting the best that we can. In order to stay competitive in this environment of selecting of people to fill our positions from a dwindling pool across the country, if not just across the state, we have had to be do things to be a little bit different, differentiate ourselves, be very competitive. And so this year, once again, as you did in the fall, we extended our recruiting incentives through February. And what we'd like to do is get approval now so that we can get these incentives onto our job advertisements for those areas which are a little bit harder to fill. And so we provided you a list of those incentives. And Ms. Montagna, if you mind coming up, since this is your item. This particular thing this year, we wanted to continue with the bus drivers, also with incentives for teachers. We may have a few principals that we'd also like to add on an incentive to recruit them also. And what was the last one? Counselors are also included with teachers and those that fall on that scale. Is there other one, Ms. Montagna?
President Mortensen, members of the board. Yes, a lot of the incentives are a carryover from last year, which includes the relocation incentives or expenses, which this will be classroom teachers, sped teachers, administrators, and counselors. That's all the same. For the signing incentives, again, we're going as we did last year with the 18, 20, and 22,000. We do want to add an incentive for all new head principals, which would be an $18,000 incentive, which will be over 2 years. I do want to point that out. It is over 2 years. We pay them first semester, second semester of the first year, and then the end of the first and second semester of the second year. Assistant principals, we want to add in a $10,000 signing incentive over 2 years. And then, of course, the bus drivers, that's a carryover from last year, a $3,000 signing incentive. I put the specifics below that on what is required, how the payout goes. So with that, do you guys have any questions over that?
Board members?
Mr. Mortensen?
Yes,
I do,
ma'am.
please. I thank you very much for your report. A couple of questions, because I don't see teacher, assistant, are they included in this?
At one point last year, we did include some of that. We have not added that this year, as we are currently working on staffing to see how many positions will be needed. At this point, we're almost fully staffed with classified. It's usually not as big a hardship to try to fill those positions, but it is something we definitely look into.
Yeah, that's an easier to fill position. If it became a position where it was hard to fill, then we would look at another incentive for that. But these are only positions that we suspect that we will have a harder time filling compared to others. And so sometimes we'll get a position where we have 30 applicants, and those kinds of jobs, there's no need to do an incentive because we can find those people. But there's other positions that it's much more competitive, and so those are the ones that we targeted.
So these are just sign-on incentives?
Correct.
are we doing anything for our current employees that have continued to dedicate themselves in staying with us? Are we doing any kind of incentives for them?
Mr. Mortensen, Ms. Benali, as you may recall, in the fall, we completed our first one from last year for a recruitment incentive or retention incentive, and then we did another one for a recruitment incentive after that in the fall or winter. And so that is the retention incentive that allows us to help retain staff. So we did do that each year. We've done that for several years.
So we'll be doing that again 2023, 2024.
That will be a decision in the budget process, which we do in June, approval for that. And so we will look at the federal funds and other funds that we receive from the state to make a determination of what that could be. And so those decisions usually are made closer to the winter time or late fall before we decide whether we want to continue with recruitment incentives and whether we have the funding for that to continue. But I would hope so. We still have federal funds that are available during that time. Eventually those are going to dry up, which is going to limit us to some extent on some of these incentives, recruiting and retention. But even before we had the federal funds, we were at least doing some retention incentives. We do receive a lot of comments about this money for recruitment. Well, if we were to, for $20,000 over a couple years to recruit a teacher to the district, there's not enough money in the district to do that for all employees. And so there is some give and take with respect to what we can do with the funds. Obviously, we want to make sure, and it's been a priority of the board to do our best to try to make sure there are no long-term substitutes in classes as much as possible. And so that's one of the reasons why we put so much money dollars into recruiting, to help alleviate those problems when you do have a long-term sub in some cases in classrooms. And so, again, this is just a continuation of some of the strategic planning that you have done, that we have tried to accomplish in making sure that we have teachers in the classroom along with other staff that are hard to find.
I was looking, Mr. Martinson, thank you, Mr. Hyatt. I was looking at some of the bills and one of the LESC's endorsement legislation for 2023. There's a House Bill 127. And in that House Bill 127 is education assistant salary increase. And I think that's something we need to kind of look at to see if that does go through. It just says, this bill would amend whatever section it is of the law and to increase the minimum annual salary for licensed educational assistants from $12,000 to $25,000. So that's one of their recommendation, and to include a budget recommendation increase of $14.5 million to help with the salary increase. So I just was wondering if that was something in the future that we're continuing to look at. I know we did that for our Navajo culture teachers, our native language culture teachers, and then also for our regular teachers. So that's just something that I spotted. So, Lynn.
Yeah, I mentioned one as far as the retention incentive that we do give out. There are several other things, obviously, with increases in pay, legislative mandates for increases in pay. Typically, we always support all of those things to increase dollars to the school district to pay our employees, but we also at the same time watch very closely, because more often than not, less dollars are given than what the bill requires to pay, and so we are shorted, or money is taken from somewhere else that we were using to cover pay and salaries. And so we're still doing that. In this particular bill, we're excited for that bill. We just want to make sure the state fully funds those programs. For example, the Navajo language and culture, or the heritage language, or language culture teachers that were funded at a higher rate were not fully funded, and they had to give one-time dollars to help fill the gap. That's not the way we should be doing it. We should get all the dollars up front so they don't have to every year give more dollars to help fill the gap. And so those are the things that we watch out for, and we'll continue to do so.
Thank you for the questions. Any other questions? Mr. Long, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Mitchell? How many ballpark? How many teachers do you think we're looking for this go around, the hiring season?
Mr. Mortensen, members of the board, at this time, we are currently working on staffing, and we should be able to start posting mid-February for our new positions for next year. Historically, we're running around 80 positions that will be posted. I'm hoping it'll be somewhere maybe a little less than that with our incentives, but I don't have the concrete number on that yet.
One of the things taken into consideration too is this year we do have quite a few visa holders that are not able to continue with us due to regulations. And so that may up the number a little bit, but that doesn't mean that it'll be higher as a whole or the total number. But once we get staffing done, we'll know how many teachers we need. We're working on letters of intent right now. When we get those back, that gives us a good gauge of what staff are returning, which ones are not. But as soon as we have those numbers, that we have a better guess. Right now, it'd be really a loose guess. But like Kadon said, I mean, 8 years ago, we were going almost 300 teachers a year. Last year, we were less than 100, maybe closer to 80, 85, somewhere in there. And so that's a drastic reduction and a huge improvement in retention for the school district that you're not seeing in a lot of other districts. And so we've done some good work. Doesn't mean that we're always not looking to improve, but we'll give you those numbers that are a better estimate of what those will be here in the near future.
Great work. We appreciate it. I think we all agree on that. I mean, the consistency equals success, and so the more we can retain good staff members, and the better off our students will be in the long run. So thank you very much for your efforts. Board members, I'll entertain a motion for item 6C, approval of signing incentives for teachers, counselors, principals, and bus drivers for the 23-24 school year.
Motion.
All right,
Mr. President.
second? Second for Mr. Shaw. Quick on it. Roll call, please, Joan.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Benali,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen.
Yes. Thank you. And we'll jump back to item 6B. We've got our handouts now. Mr. Hyatt, please take it away.
Mr. Mortensen, members of the board, you'd asked for this particular item to go to action for this meeting. And we were also asked just to put together some estimated costs for travel. Again, each year we budget tens of thousands of dollars for travel because obviously, as you know, there's a requirement for credits, school board association meetings. Several of us were recently at Gallup McKinley Day doing work to help further legislation and communication with the state legislature and also our governor, which we were able to spend a good amount of time with this year, which was welcomed. And so we also put together for travel for the needs of the board. And so for this particular conference, we put down the dollar cost for that. The first two sections are multiplied by 2 for two people to go. The air flights are individuals, and so you'd have to double those for the costs. And so we just gave you an average of what plane tickets are for that destination.
All right. Any questions? Board members?
Mr. Martinson?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to go ahead and motion for approval of out-of-state travel for board members, Orlando, Florida, April 1st through the 3rd, 2023, to attend the National School Board Association National Conference.
Okay. I'll hold that motion open for just a second. Are there any questions? Any questions on the presentation?
I was going to add my question to that.
Okay, you first then.
Okay, thank you very much. I think one of the things that we always look at too is, trying to cut costs by applying and getting the registration earlier and before near the date of the conference, because I think with us being proactive, that also helps. So I think some of the costs would have been a little bit less if we could have got this, kind of like with any registration, later on in the date, there's always like a deadline or a cutoff date. So I think with that, I believe it's the same, correct?
What's your question? The same what?
The same
Sorry.
rates after deadline? Or is it
There's
more or less?
there's a little bit different for the registration, and so those are on the sheet. That's the current cost for after January 11th. There was a reduced cost before that. I believe the hotels are the same. That didn't change. Air flights, I'm uncertain. I mean, obviously, when you request air flights, they're a little cheaper the earlier you reserve them. So I can't speak specifically to that one, whether that changed or not. But the registration did change a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Long. Yes, sir.
Mr. President, one of the concerns I've always had about trips like this is, we always have Kevin and Priscilla, the first ones to say we're going to go, and that leaves out the three of us. And then when the two individuals go to these trainings or conferences, we never get a feedback as a board as to what was learned and what was learned, how can that benefit the school district. That's always been my concern. And I think we need to pretty much put a fix to that. And I think just last week or the last meeting we had, that was the first time Kevin asked me if I wanted to go. But, there needs to be a report. When I was board chair, when they went on trips, I always got calls from other school districts within the state that didn't sound good for our school district. And those are my concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Long. I think it's probably a pretty reasonable request for a report when the trip's over, and I think that this trip is the same as any other trips where I believe it's open to anybody on the school board that's a part of the National School Board Association to attend. And so, maybe we rotate that around, or more people go next year and try to learn more.
Mr. Mortensen, I just want to add that we used to have a report section on the board agenda, and that the board requests that. Mr. Mortensen, you're welcome to put that back on for travel so that there can be a report. We used to do that.
Mr. Martinson, I also agree with that. I think it's something that needs to be done because these board conferences, and especially with dealing with the New Mexico National School Board Association, there's a lot of vital information there. And a lot of people complained, and even board members complained, that our meetings were taking too long. But, one of the issues that we had was that was time for us to reflect on what the training was. And I think never is a hard word to use at this point, because there are times when I've brought information back and distribute it to you guys, or I've given them to Joan to distribute it to you guys if I didn't get an extra breakout session packet. If I just brought back one, I would hand that off and give that information. And I think as what was stated earlier, the latest initiatives, the latest educational resources that we can bring back to our district is vital. We know what is happening with career readiness. We know what is happening with technology that is making our livelihood and the best interest for our students out there. So I think if we attend this and give a report, that would be great. I just don't want to be cut off and be told, well, that's enough. But I think having us continuing to educate ourselves as board members is something that is great and beneficial not only to ourselves but for our district.
Thank you, Ms. Benali. All right, so we have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
What was the motion?
The motion by Ms. Benali to approve the action item 6B.
Second.
Second by Mr. Mitchell to approve action item 6B, approval of out-of-state travel for board members to Orlando, Florida, April 1st through the 3rd, 2023, to attend the NSBA National Conference. Roll call, please.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a substitute motion that we only allow one board member to go. That's my motion.
I think we probably need to vote on the motion that's on the table first, and then we will entertain that afterwards as a point of order. Am I correct on my parliamentary rules?
Mr. Martinson, do we have a budget issue due to that? Or are we able to, then the reason why I'm asking, sir, is because, we've attended the national conference with our superintendent, other other staff and ourselves at one time. And it's a vast amount of information, and we kind of delegated ourselves and looked at the agenda and said, this is where we're going, this is which one we're going to kind of pick up and get information from. And it's hard to get all the information that you want from one individual. So, I mean, there's just, if you have a plan and we can do that, then I think that would make more sense.
And just to go off of that, all the other school boards in the state, they have all 5 of their board members there. So they all go to different sessions and, bring back that information. And like she's saying, when it's just one board member trying to attend and there's 10 different sessions going on at once, you can't do that. So, and for him to say that there are only 2 or only go all the time and don't give the other ones a chance, that's up to you guys if you want to attend or not. We don't have a set number of who gets to go and who doesn't get to go. It's board members, 5. If you guys all want to go, I would be more than happy if we all could attend as together, So, but anyway, I just have to say that.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Roll call on the motion on the table, please. Joe?
Substitute motion is handled first before the main motion.
Is that how it works? Okay. The substitute motion will be handled first. So is there a second to Charles' substitute motion? Second by Mr. Schaaf. Please restate the substitute motion, and we'll go ahead and take a vote.
Okay, the substitute motion affects how a main motion is handled and is voted on before the main motion.
Thank you. Can you restate the actual motion, though, please? The substitute motion that was made by Mr. Long, just so we have clarity on what we're voting on.
The motion was made to allow one person to attend.
Okay. To allow one person to attend, is that correct? Okay. All right. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mitchell,
No.
Ms. Benali,
No.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Long, Mr. Martinson.
Abstain. All right. The other motion is on the table. That was to approve the out-of-state travel for Florida. And that was made by
Ms. Benali,
Ms.
second
Benali, and
by Mr.
seconded
Mitchell.
by Mr. Mitchell. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Benali,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
No.
Mr. Long, Mr. Martinson.
Yes. All right. That concludes our business for today. Can we please entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second by Ms. Benali. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Benali,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Martinson.
Yes. That
2:20.
That concludes our meeting. It's 2:20. We're adjourned.